So here what we are discussing here, guys, we are discussing about the defect. If we work as a tester, our one of the key responsibility is, I mean, I'll say that one of the major responsibility, if you work as a tester, whenever you see something inconsistent in the application, whenever you see your requirements are not meeting, right, you whenever you see that the application is not functioning as it is expected in the requirement, right, then you report a defect. So as a tester, right, how do you express your opinion if there is a inconsistency? You by writing a defect. You write a defect and you assign it to a particular person to fix it, right? So here when you report a defect, we'll make sure that we have the following thing in the defect. So you will have a defect header section, right? What is the defect header? If you go to your defects, right, you will see, let's say that if you open a defect, let's say unexpected, the latest defect that we have reported today, right, if you open this, you will see that, can you see all of this feature backlog, severity, right? You can select high critical or major. You can select all of this here. You can say, okay, what is the backlog this defect is, what is the release, right? Can you see? And then if it is closed on what date, right? You can say application module, priority, severity, all of these things in the defect header. You select this. If you are reporting a defect whom you are assigning it, you, like in the beginning, you select all of this. So that is what we are calling defect headers. Does it make sense? What is defect headers? To everyone, does it make sense, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so that is what we do in defect headers. And then you come to the summary, right? We include a line or two, right, describing the describing the summary of the defect. What is the defect about? What is the key things about the defect? You mention it in the summary tab. And then let's say that if you, like, for the defect, if they have to log in, right, you put the username or password, right? Let's say you have to provide the test data, otherwise people will not be able to go to the application and they'll be able to recreate the defect, right? So you provide the username, password. Or if you have to, let's say that okay, this application, if I supply this data, it doesn't work, so you mention that test data, right? So you mention the password, user ID, password. You provide corresponding things here in test data. Expected output, right? What was your, what do you mention here? What was your expectation? You mention it here. Okay, what was your expectation? Now what is actual output, right? Here you mention, what do you mention here in the expectation tab? Can anyone speak up, please? Actual output tab, what do you mention?
What is expected after the inputs were put in?
That is
Actual output with the defect what we seeing right now.
right. So in the expected, you mention what was your expectation. In the actual, what you have got. What what actually what actually you have got from the application under current condition, right? So you mention this. And then screenshots. So if there is a error appearing or anything abnormal, inconsistent appearing, you provide the screenshot, the screenshot, right? And then in the how to recreate, how to recreate or regenerate, in this step you provide step by step, right? Remember the defect that you have recreated, uh, sometimes in the application you might have to perform 15-20 steps to recreate the issue, right? So so that everyone can recreate the issue, you say what are the step by step functionality, what are the step by step actions user need to do to recreate the defect. Does it make sense? So you mention all of this. So if I go back the tool, right, if I go back to the tool, let's say that if I have to if I go to the defect, if I have to recreate a defect plus defect, right, that is where I am giving a defect name, right? Login didn't work, okay. And then if it is associated with a backlog, if it is associated with a particular functionality, right, I'm going to see if there is a functionality, right? I think I do not have a backlog, or let's say I'm going to say user registration didn't work, user registration feature not functioning, right? And then you come here, if you want to associate it with a particular backlog, let's say you type here registration, right, and then registration and search for it. It seems no backlog. Registration, right? Let's say register, let's see. If I put 2005, actually it seems I don't have a corresponding backlog, but you will be in the actual tool, you will be able to select if you want to associate this defect with a particular backlog, you will be able to do that. Now if registration is not working, depending on the severity, right? Severity means how badly it is impacting the application, you will be able to select. Okay, it is very high, let's say application module, you will be able to select application module. Story points, if there is any story points, right, let's say let me see if I have any story point here. I think, yeah, these story points. So if you have multiple story, you can say how many story points you have here. Defect release, if it is in the particular release, you will be able to select your release. Now if you want to assign it to a particular person, right, whom did I select as a development team, right? Let's say I'm going to assign it to the development team, like who will be fixing the defect. You can assign it to here, and then defect type, let's say this is before release, it is not in the production, and then you select your testing environment, QA environment, right? And then this is the defect header, right? These are the defect header. Now you put a summary here.
I'm still kind of confused on the story point. So if you have two story point, how would you do?
So here, let's say sometimes you might see that a particular defect, it is associated with multiple stories. Multiple stories means like how many, it is kind of to say, okay, what is the priority in terms of if a defect is, remember that in your if you go back to the tool, you have epics, stories, right? The link that I sent you, you have epics, stories. Now a defect might be associated with multiple story points, so that is what we are trying to point out here.
Oh, okay.
So a defect, like if a defect is associated with 2 or 3 story points, that means it might have, basically it could be a severe defect. So thus you mentioned, like I think it is not that much important field in terms of how much importance it has, but it seems in some cases we might have a defect that is associated with multiple stories, multiple user stories. So you mentioned if you have a situation like this. So then you will be coming here, you will be putting a summary. Okay, what are the summary you are seeing. Let's say when you submit your user registration, as we have reported today, that we are seeing some unnecessary text. We are seeing that the user's confidential information is exposed. Let's say that after submitting the registration, we saw that users confidential information is displayed. We saw that it was displayed in the page, right? Then you come here, this is the summary. Now in this case, right, the next step is test data, right? So do you have a test data here? The test data can be anything, whatever you need for registration, right? So you mention if you have a user ID and password for login, you will have to say user ID and password. In this case, for user registration, test data is all necessary data for registering a user. Then you come to the expected output. A plain registration successful message. Then what was the actual output? Users user ID, email, password were displayed in the page along with other data, right? This is your actual output, and you take a screenshot from the application. Let's say if you go there, right, if you go to register, and then you provide your information here. You provide your user ID and you provide your password test123. Let's say user1, and then you provide your password test123. You put your email test@test.com. You put your number 404-567-09000. Now if you submit it, right, can you see users, all of the confidential data is displayed here, right? So that is what you take a screenshot of this display, and then you highlight whatever you need to, right? All of this unnecessary data is being displayed here, right? Okay, so then you include this particular defects in your defect information screenshot here, right, by Ctrl V, right? Now we have all of this body of the defect, and then you say how to recreate, right? Can you see task to regenerate, right? Open qaquestions.org. Number 2, click on register menu item. Number 3, input all the values, right? Number 4, submit. That's it, right? And then you say add. That's it. So that is how you report a defect. I'm going to send you this information. Let me save this here. related defect. How to report a defect. Save. I'll be sending this information after the class. Now, do you have any further question on defect, how to report defect? Anyone?
No, ma'am.
So this is a good interview question. Okay, what do you do when you report a defect? What do you include when you report a defect? If you can explain this in a good way, this will be a good answer. Okay, so that's all regarding the defect. Let me stop this recording.